Hello, today we are going to be talking about the Claas Jaguar 502 series forage harvester with CEBIS monitor with touchscreen. This presentation will cover a number of functions of the Claas Jaguar, including the proper way to use CMOS Auto Performance System. The videos in this presentation were intended to give people a general overview and instructions for use of the CEBIS monitor with touchscreen functionality in the Claas Jaguar cab. Videos are intended for training use only in the proper use of operation of a Claas Jaguar 502, 500, and 499 series machines equipped with the CEBIS monitor with touch functionality. Individual machine screens or settings may differ from the video as a result of, but not limited to, options installed on the Claas Jaguar machine, differences in model, series, production period, software updates, Claas service required updates, and etc. Always consult the Claas Operator's Manual for questions of operation and safety of processes concerning this machine. Thank you for taking time to learn more about the Claas Jaguar.
Hello, today we're going to talk about the new Jaguar 900 series with the new CEBIS with touch screen. As a recommendation always is to follow the procedures in the owner's manual and adhere to all the warning decals as we get started here. So today we'll talk about generalities of the new CEBIS Touch monitor. First thing is we have two screens. We have what we call road travel mode, as well as our working mode, so you can see different menus depending on if we're on the road or in the field. Some nice things about the road mode is if you get the rear view camera, you can have that displayed in your monitor. If you tap it, you can have the rear view camera show up. If you're trying to hitch onto a wagon or just backing up, you can have that full screen. If we go into the field working mode, we have a lot of different things that we can touch with the monitor to adjust. First one is our job counter. We can have 1 through 20 jobs, or if you get the task management, you can load up jobs from like Trimble, Agley, or whatever into here to have more detailed looking jobs. The chopper icon you see is green. That will show what this is here, where you can change your different settings on the machine. If you get cameras, so like your rear camera, you can have pop up there if you want to look at the stubble of the forage harvester, if you're making sure you're picking up the crop, or when you're backing up to something else. You can also make it go full screen to have a really good visibility as well. We do offer with cameras, you can have rear backup camera, you can have the Profi camera on the spout, or with autofill you can have the autofill show up there, or as well as one of these three boxes. So in these three boxes here on the side, you can adjust to whatever you would like to see in them. So if you want, so this is setting up our header heights and flotation. This is just a normal display 1. You can change what you see on display 1. So you have plenty of different things. So if you want to see fuel level on there, you can have fuel level, and then always a double arrow gets rid of the screen. And see there you can have fuel level. And on the bottom one, just for example, we are showing we have the new ActiSiler 37 showing the details of what it's doing with fuel level, temperature, how much is left, if it's active or not active, that type of thing. The main things to look at here is in the working menu is we've got our different things we can change. So there's many ways that you can change this number. The first way is you can move the arrow back and forth by sliding your finger on the screen. You can use the plus minus key to change the length of cut, or you can tap on the number and type in the length of cut that you want. And then the last one is over on the right hand side of the armrest, the back button. It looks like a knife cutting through some lines. You can manually adjust the length of cut there without having to touch the screen. So if you're going through the field and want to just adjust the length of cut a little bit, you can do that from the buttons on the side. And then you can see the screen goes away. Across the bottom, we'll get into our hotkey functions, our favorite menu. You can see your ground speed at the bottom. You can see if you're in first gear or second gear, as well as you can see with a four-wheel drive machine, if the green tires are green, that means it's in two-wheel drive. If the back tires turn green, it's in four-wheel drive. You can see your park, and then you'll have all the other options that you can see when they're activated. When they're activated, they will turn green. Our front header attachment menu. We can assign what header is on, but with header recognition, typically when you hook up the header, it should automatically pick which header. We can assign the working width, and that helps us for our acre counter. The partial increments is if we got a 24-foot 10-row head, it's 10 rows, we can put that in. Now if we're doing a pickup and we're merging or raking 3 swaths into there, we can do 3, and that will help us to assign for the acre counter if you're really wanting to have acres adjusted correctly. Auto contour, we can adjust how fast it's moving. We can adjust how fast the side-to-side oscillation is moving. We can adjust how fast the drop rate and lift rate, as well as cross leveling. So with a corn head on, and if you're going through the field and it feels like the chopper is really jerky, you can turn down the side-to-side motion for that, and that will smooth out the chopper, because it just means that it's trying to go too fast of measuring the side-to-side, and it's really jerking the chopper, especially if you got smaller tires on and the tires are in the narrow base format. Next one is our front attachment height. If we hit our preset height number here, you see how it becomes bold. We can either tap on here and adjust the height to what we want, and it'll learn that, or we can go into another menu that we'll get to in a minute. Working position, this is when your inoculant, your acre counter, everything turns off. So we want to set that for just a little bit below whatever you're raising the header for headland height, so that way it stops counting acres. It shuts off your inoculant when you're turning on the headland. And then follow the owner's manual's instructions to learn your upper and lower limits. It's extremely important when you put a new head on that you learn the upper and lower, so the header can perform up and down properly. Now we're going to adjust our header height. So we turn our engine on, we turn our cutter head on. Please make sure things are safe around you before you do that, and again, reference your owner's manual and all the safety procedures. So now if we want to adjust in our header things, we have to select, let's say, preset height. So we hit the preset height button, and you see now the little icon turns green, and we can set then the height. We can either come into the monitor and hit the button here, and we can change that this way, or we can use a little toggle switch that looks like header up and down off to the right of the armrest, and you can see how it moved. And if we hit the preset height button again, you see how it went to the white one, and that's how we would run a corn head if we had no auto contour ones. As well as any other head, when we turn on the headland, we can set that height, so for headland height. Now we can do the flotation. So we have an older header attached here, so that's why we're in a negative number. A negative number is using the float of the feed roll cabinet. If you're in a positive number, you're using electronic sensors on the hay head. And you can again use the buttons on the side of the armrest to adjust it up or down. And with a hay head, you always want to get out, and once you got it set right, go look at the brass tube on the right hand side of the hay head. And with the chopper sitting still safely in park, that tube should be in the upper 1/3 of the slot. Let's talk about the drive menu. When we select the drive menu, the first one is when we put our throttle to the middle position of how high it will throttle up. So currently we have it at 1800. The next one is our driving strategy. So when we push our joystick forward and back, the higher the number, the more aggressive it'll feel. So it's kind of like associating it between a little 4-cylinder car versus a car with a V8 and how responsive the joystick is. The next one is our CMOS auto performance. We can assign how much power we put to the front axle or rear axle in full drive. So if you're in really muddy conditions with a corn head and the rear tires are spinning, you can assign more power to the front tires to equal that out. The pulses per 1,000 are just simply if you've changed tires to calibrate your ground speed. And then the last one is your tire pressure. This is an option from Claas. You can set in the field your field working pressure as well as your road pressure. If you do a lot of roading with your forage harvester, this is really an important feature, because in the field we can make it ride really nice, as you can see at 15.7 psi. But when we're on the road and roading long distances with this heavy machine, especially if you've got an Orbis 900 on, having your tires aired up to the proper pressure will keep them from flexing as much on the sidewalls and will protect your tires better. Now let's go into the steering mode. So to turn on autopilot, we just hit the green button. We can look at what sensor, so if you have Cam Pilot for steering on a windrow, the touch arms, or if you're using GPS steering, you would go with no sensor. You can adjust the left right if it's trying to go too much to one direction. You can straighten it as well as play with the aggressiveness. Down here on the learn the touch arms, you can learn the 0 point of the touch arms when you start out for the year. Now let's get into the machine. There's quite a few things that we can learn in the machine. So when we go to the feeder unit, we do have this option called automatic length of cut control. If you get that option, you can turn it on or off here. You have to have a NIR moisture sensor to do that. When you do that, you can have it adjust your length of cut based on your moisture or dry matter. I know parts of the country talk in dry matter, some parts talk in moisture. So in this example, you can see here we're at dry matter. So when the crop is wetter, we wanted to chop 21 millimeter. When it's in a middle range of 35 dry matter or 65% moisture, we wanted to chop 19. And if we get really dry, then it'll go down to 15.5. So we can really keep a good consistent shaker box sample going into the bunk this way. And it's all up to you what you want to do. We also have adjustable hydraulic pre-compression. This is now standard equipment on the new 502 Series 900. You can most of the time run it in automatic mode. In an automatic mode, it'll adjust it depending on the crop and the length of cut you're in. But in certain situations, you can run it in manual. So for example, if you're chopping corn in October and it got frosted and it's really brown or the spider mites got to it, you can switch to manual, because if you were chopping at 21 millimeter, it's going to be set on weak. And maybe you're getting a little bit of raggy cut, you've sharpened your knives, the shear bar is good. What we have seen with this nice feature is then come in here and select medium. And that will really help, because then the feed rolls are pushing down on the crop more, holding it better, and you'll improve your chop quality, so you'll have a lot more consistent. Then the last one is our direct stop. Direct stop we can have on for hay head, so when we get metal or a rock, it'll stop us. We can adjust the metal detector sensitivity, as well as we can adjust the stone detector sensitivity. Stone detector sensitivity will vary greatly depending on the crop, the conditions, as well as your length of cut. So we don't really have a good number to recommend depending on which situation. You need to adjust the sensitivity so you get 1 or 2 false trips a day. That is a really good way to know that you've got it set to get those smaller rocks. Cutting cylinder. Only thing under the cutting cylinder is to tell the machine how many knives you have in here. If you go to half knives, you need to tell the machine that. Discharge accelerator, you can change the gap on the go. The learning procedure I won't get in today. Follow the owner's manual to do that. The ensilage agent, you can assign if you get the optional octisiler tank as well as a big tank. You can have them both going at the same time, or you can have one or the other. The main big thing is if you have a moisture meter and a tonnage meter, you can then do it by throughput dependence. If you want ounces per ton, you can do it that way. Constant is ounces per hour or gallons per hour. And material dependent, the bottom one, is if you want to adjust the amount of inoculant going on for moisture. So we have throughput dependent, that's the most popular. So what's nice with this is you can mix up your inoculant always to the same rate, and then as you chop through the field, if you're chopping 100 ton an hour, it's going to put on so many ounces per ton. If you're now up at 420 ton an hour in corn with a 990 pushing hard, it'll put the right amount on throughout the time. It's a very intelligent system. You can also come in here to see the fill level of the tanks, as well as with the octisiler, it'll even tell you the temperature of the tank. The next menu we have is the OptiFill and Autofill menu. You can turn on OptiFill on and off, and by turning it on with OptiFill option, it's when you rotate the spout, it automatically adjusts your end cap, as well as on your joystick, the button that looks like a spout down button on the joystick on the C-motion handle. When you hit that with the knife drum off, it'll park the spout for you. As well as if you hold that button 3 seconds, it will automatically move your spout to the back, straight back position for if you're going to do a cut through or split through the field. Now when we get into the autofill menu, if you want autofill to work correctly or with a full function, you want to make sure you hit discharge flap and discharge direction. Autofill is also an option. Filling strategy, we always recommend if you have semis, use front to back, so it'll start filling the front, and as it's full in the front, it'll keep working its way back. If you're going to fill straight trucks, use rear, which means it'll start filling to the rear and making its way forward. So with autofill, you do need to adjust some different settings. So this first one is how close or far away the end cap is throwing the crop in the trailer. So if you are getting the silage too close to you and it's coming off the sidewall near you, you just need to come into this menu and go up 1 or 2 numbers. As you can see here, how the number indicates on the screen. Fill level. Fill level is done by measuring the bottom of the trailer to the top. So depending on how high your sidewalls are on the trailer, this number will be different, but we do recommend to run the fill level so it's filling about 90% of the trailer, and then you manually top off the trailer, because especially if you have different trailers, this is kind of handy. The next menu over is how close you're filling it to the front. The next menu over is how close you are filling it to the rear, so you're not spilling off the back, as well as your filling sensitivity. It's how fast the spout will move. Typically stick really close to 0 as possible. Now if you're changing spouts or extensions through the season, you do need to come in and tell it which spout extension that you have in. Swivel rates, that'll be the end cap. The rest of the spout rotations, please keep them at zero. Now if you change a sensor or do some adjusting, or you don't think autofill is working correctly, follow the owner's manual's instructions and do the start learning procedure to learn all the end stops of your sensors. Sharpening menu. So we got some different things. It's very similar to what we used to have with the old monitor. So you can do sharpening the knives. If you hit this button with the knife drum on, you can sharpen the knives. You can come in, adjust the shear bar, so you can see The shear bar clearance is set for 8 of 10, and there's 65% of the knives left. You can park the shear bar. Again, please look at the owner's manual for proper instructions. Then under the settings, we can look to see, again, the condition of our knives, the next time we should sharpen. So right now we have it set for 5 passes. When we sharpen, we've got the shear bar clearance set for 8 and the sharpening interval for 10. You can also, if you have the tonnage meter, set it up to remind you to sharpen after so many tons. The next menu that we need to take care of is the quantimeter. So the little wheat head with crop. This is where we adjust the tonnage meter and calibrate the tonnage meter and turn on the moisture sensor. So the first is the crop type. Maize is corn, grass, lucerne is alfalfa, sorghum, whole crop is wheat. One tip or trick out there in the market is if you're doing pre-boot or slightly above pre-boot, I recommend for the moisture meter for the most accuracy to pick grass. If the crop is fully headed out or mostly headed out, then try to pick whole crop. There's a wide range for the moisture meter for this type of crop, so you might have to select which one is the best. The test weighing. So when we want to calibrate the yield monitor, we come into this menu, hit on. We go chop our load. When we're done chopping our load, we hit off. And it'll have counted the chopper how many tons it thought it did. When you know the tons, you don't have to do it right away. You can wait until you find out what the tons are from the scale. You'll hit a little button above here that'll tell it, and then you can enter in the net tons. When you enter in the net tons, it will change then this calibration number. The next one is our ingredient sensor. So you can turn on and off the moisture sensor. If you get the option from Claas, it's an extra option, you can get ingredients. So Asylum is starch, fiber, protein, ash, and fat. And this is where also you can change it from dry matter to moisture to read out on the monitor. Another nice feature is if you want to really pay attention to how full you're filling the wagons, you can have up to 3 different trailers and how many tons you chop. So when you start chopping into a truck, it'll start counting up, and so if you have truck 1 selected in the monitor, it'll fill it to 12 tons, and then it'll give you a message on the screen telling you, hey, I'm at 12 tons. Then when you stop, all you gotta do is hit the head forward button and it'll reset. And now if maybe you want truck 3 underneath you, use your function button and move it to truck 3, and then it'll chop until you hit 16 tons, and it'll give you an alert that you're at 16 tons. But you can change the tons to whatever you want in those 3. So in the job counter, we can come in and we can look at a job. We can clear the job. We can look at the information. So in the job counter, we can see cutting hours. We can see our fuel consumption, our tons per hour. We can see the average moisture. If you have moisture meter as an option, you can see how much inoculant you put on as well. We can come in here to reset it. All you do is push to reset it. You can start the job, and you can calibrate even how many acres if you know what the field has for true acres. The next is the counter menu. So if you hit your daily recorder, you can come in and see this is your resettable recorder. You can again here see your hours, travel distance, fuel consumption. You can see how many tons you chopped, how much inoculant you put on, as well as if you're trying to see what the true average of the moisture of the crop is, come in here, reset it. And this is where we recommend you then to go chop a load and then come in here, and then you can see your average moisture and your average dry matter, and that is a pretty good indication of what that truck averaged. And then also you have your total sum. So you can see with this machine it has 362 engine hours, the cutter head hours, and it gives you all of that information. Service menu. You can come in and clear out your reminders. To do that, just hit the arrow, hit yes, and it also gives you all the things that you should check for when at your different service hours. So you can follow the owner's manual as well. Central lube. You can do a one-time lubing of the machine. This is where you can learn end stops of different sensors, maintenance settings. If you want with hydraulic pre-compression, if you want to raise the feed rolls up, you can do that. You have your vehicle information, which gives out voltages, temperatures, and you can look at all the different sensors. If you're having an issue, you can look these up. Engine diagnostics. You can have some alarm histories. You can see the software versions on the modules. You can see the languages. Telematics. We highly encourage everybody to be using their telematics. Telematics is free for the first year. You can use the app or you can use the web-based program to see your machine, look at the status of the machine and all that good information. So the next menu is settings. This is a really important menu. So you can change your operating modes, which modes show up on top. User type, professional, gives you all access to all things. If you've got an inexperienced operator in here and don't want them to make a lot of adjustments in the monitor, you can set the beginner mode. Display settings, you can set the brightness of the screen. User defined. So these are these little boxes on the main screen, and you can come in here and select your display 1. You can select the display 2, like we showed in doing the box. You can pick what you want to read out in these different displays. The favorite management system. This is a new option or new standard feature on the new Jaguar 900 series with the CMOS handle. So the button that used to be always on the old handle, the roller crop press button or side-to-side leveling for corn head, is now a favorites menu button. With favorites menu button, you can have up to 7 positions. And we'll get into this a little bit later with the joystick. There's an up and down arrow, and you can select which one that you want. So if you put the box on position 1, it will go to, you can see down here, it's right now we had the header side to side. But if you don't want header side to side, and let's say you want air horn, position 1, you can have air horn. By doing that, you can see here in the menus, we can select air horn, we can select spout up and down, this, and so you can change it to whatever you want. So this here, because we have autofill, we can have the autofill. Filling height, we can use that trigger from our roller crop press trigger in the past to change that. And you see once you stop pushing the button, it's down here in the bottom. And it'll even tell you at what number you're at. So you can put in different positions, different things for that feature. Lighting, if you want the back lights to come on at night when you back up, you can do that. As well as with autofill, you can have the beacons, the flashing beacons come on when it senses the trailer is 75% full to alert the next empty truck that you're about full with that truck and he can get coming on to your area. Sound level, you can assign how loud the monitor beeps at you for codes and reminders. This is a very important menu, assignment of display areas. We do this so you can assign the boxes I talked about. So right now we have the header height boxes selected for number 1. We have display 1 set. So if we wanted to put rear camera there, so now when I go back, you can see here we have the rear camera. So we can set whatever you want to put to that menu. Some other things is where here we can assign our camera outputs, And then the bottom one is basic settings, where we assign English measurement, English language, miles or kilometers, the type of tons, acres, hectares, gallons, liters, and all of that type of thing. Then the last menu is information. If a code comes up, you can hit that to get more information. Let's talk about our new CMOS Auto Performance. For 2020, it's only available on the Jaguar 970, 980, and 990 with the new series. To access the CMOS Auto Performance, you just need to touch the instrument cluster, and then you can see it come up. This button on the right turns CMOS Auto Performance on and off. If you have that off, it always will stay at the same throttle. If you turn it on, when you turn on a headland, it will reduce the engine RPM. If you stop for a truck, it'll reduce engine RPM. To save on fuel, we recommend reusing it. Then the next one is when you put your throttle to the middle position, you can adjust how high the throttle goes up. So with a Jaguar forage harvester, you don't need full throttle to achieve most of your harvesting. So we recommend setting that between 1800 and 1850, because all you're doing is wasting and burning fuel. The next one over is the dynamic power part of CMOS Auto Performance. You can have 10 of 10, means that the machine's always going to push to the maximum horsepower. So a Jaguar 990 is 925 horsepower. If you're at level 10, it's always going to try to push the machine to utilize all that horsepower. Now, if we go down to level 7, that means the machine will never go above using 70% horsepower unless you hit a slug in a windrow. So if you have really sluggy windrows and you're using the CMOS Auto Performance and the pickup is plugging in really bad plugs, you can set this down to 7, and then so it'll push the machine at 70%, but if you hit a slug, it'll give it the full power, so it just keeps it just a little bit off of maximum capacity. We'll put that back to 10. Then with the CMOS Auto Performance, this is the cruise pilot part, so you can set how fast you want the machine to go up to. So in this case, we've got it set for 7.4 miles an hour. So if we're using full horsepower and not maximizing the capacity, it'll stop at 7.4 miles an hour. You can raise and lower that on the screen like we've talked about before. The last one is setting how much it's going to lug the machine down to. So in pickup work, we usually run 100 RPM or so higher than in corn. And this is where it's going to push the machine to. So it's going to keep increasing ground speed and pushing the machine at full horsepower down to 1680. And if we hit 1650, it's going to start to slow the ground speed of the machine down to maintain the 1680. So in pickup work, we do recommend 1680 to 1720 is a good range. Now if we are going to do corn, we can lower that down to 1580 to 1600, and the machine's going to keep trying to increase ground speed until it is operating at the 1580. The unique part of CMOS Auto Performance is with the dynamic power part, is if I'm at 7.4 miles an hour, it's going to decrease the horsepower and save on fuel. So if we're in light crops, you'll see down here on the display, if it shows 4 of 10, that means it's only using 40% of the total horsepower of the machine, and then it's going to save a lot of fuel that way because it's not putting all the fuel in for the horsepower. Other nice thing about CMOS Auto Performance is it doesn't get so jerky on the ground speed. So if you got 50 yards of lighter stuff, instead of really speeding up for it, it'll gradually speed up a little bit, but it'll just decrease the horsepower, so it keeps it nice and consistent so the truck or the tractor driving alongside can keep up with you. Favorites menu. On the new CMOS handle, if you have the CMOS handle, you can have favorites menu. When you hit the arrow up and down, you can choose which one you want. You see the green box? As soon as you let off of the button, and you see down here in the bottom, that's what you have selected. If you're used to the old Claas chopper, the trigger switch in front of the handle that used to run the contouring side to side for your corn head or your roller crop press, that's the button. you can now assign 7 different functions. So now if you want to raise your spout up and down, use the roller crop press button because we have spout. Now if we move it to air horn, now just tap the button and you can hear that the air horn goes. So we have different menus to do that. And then when you go into the setting menu and come to favorite management, this is where you can assign which ones and which position that you want. So if you want front attachment something different, you can assign all of these different options. So the favorites menu is a very nice feature. All you gotta do is hit your button up and down to change that function. The new CMOS handle has many new features to it. For starters, we have the new favorites menu. These are the 2 buttons that we move up and down to select which icon you want. You can also pull up your favorites menu by hitting the star button, but typically we just use the arrow and move to the icon as we talked about before. You have your autopilot button down here, which signifies to turn on your steering, as well as if you have CMOS Auto Performance or Cruise Pilot. The A is your flotation, or we call auto contour. You use auto contour when you're using a hay head or a corn head that has auto contour wands on it. We use preset height when we want to turn on the headland of the hay head, or if you have a corn head that does not have auto contour wands. We have our stop our header or reversing our header button. We have spout, end cap, up and down, and then we have rotation. The rotation is 2 speeds, so if you hit it lightly, it goes slow. If you push it hard, it goes fast. One thing to note with the new CMOS handle is think about the spout rotation as moving your thumb left and right, and end cap up and down. That is the best way to think about it as you operate it. On top, we have our header start button, as well as the OptiFill option. If you push this button with a knife drum off, it will park the spout automatically for you. If you have autofill, this is what turns on autofill on and off. With the autofill turned on, if there's no trailer nearby or the system can't sense it, it'll have yellow lines on the monitor. If autofill is locked on and ready to use, the lines will turn green. This button here is you can program left and right of the spout. So if you hit it once, it'll go one side of the chopper. If you hit it again, it'll go to the other side of the chopper. This button here used to be on the front of the handles, traditionally used for the roller crop press to raise and to lower the roller crop press, or if you had auto contour on the corn head, it would pivot the header up or down, side to side. With the new feature of the favorites menu, this is the button that you activate to select one of the 7 favorites. So if you want the air horn on there, you use the arrows up and down to get air horn, and then you just push the button for air horn. With the new Jaguar 900 series, we have a whole new armrest of buttons. So we have our first 2 buttons is to shift the Ford Harvester transmission from first to second gear. This is how we can activate full drive. Parking brake, so if we want to engage the parking brake, so if we bump the lever, it still doesn't move. This engages the inoculant, so when we hit the button, see how it turned green? Now whatever we selected in the CEBIS screen is what inoculant will go. This is where we fold our corn headers, and then our spout up and down. And remember, spout up and down can be one of our favorites menus if you have a C-motion handle. Then up on top is some nice toggle switches. When we talked about this previously in other videos, this one is our length of cut, where we can change our length of cut here. We can change our header speed if you have hydraulic header as an option. This changes your autofill height. This is a really nice button to have if you have different trailers to put the maximum height. We've got our header height. So if you want to just bump, if you got a corn header and want it a little bit higher or lower, you can do header height. This is to center the machine. And if you're really critical, you can change how many rows you're taking to calibrate the acre counter. And then here, if you push down, pull back, that is how we engage the knife drum. If you've ordered your machine with the Claas radio, you can get Bluetooth capable. You can answer the phone with the green button, hang up the phone with the red button. You can change the volumes with these buttons. To get your Bluetooth activated with your phone, turn on your Bluetooth, and when it sees it, it'll ask you probably for a passcode, and that passcode is 1, 2, 3, 4. So with the new Jaguar 900 series, we do still have the traditional scroller where we can move the icon on the monitor, but we can also touch the monitor. If you want to engage whatever menu, you just push down. If you want the traditional old button for escape, you can push the button escape here, or the double arrows on the monitor as well, you can hit on the monitor to escape. A little eye information can give you more information on the monitor, and then the star is for the favorites menu. So a really nice feature that the Claas Jaguar 900 series has is a start chopping menu and a regular chopping menu. In other terms, you can set the chopper up to have certain settings when you're doing a split, like in corn, or a cut through, depending on the language that you use in your region. So like if you're chopping with a truck behind you, you can have one settings, and then when you have a truck or tractor alongside of you, you can have different settings. The way to adjust this and set it up for the first time is you have to have the engine safely on with the knife drum safely on. You come into the machine and you come down here to own machine settings. Again, they will not be here unless you have the knife drum on. So the start chopping mode is when you're wanting to have it so when you're making a split through the field. So maybe you want the engine RPMs to be a little bit higher when you're making the split. You can have dynamic power on or off. You can have cruise pilot on or off. What is really nice is you can have direct stop off. So that way the chopper doesn't suddenly stop if you got metal out there and then the truck or tractor bumps in the rear end. But when we're chopping along the side, you can have that on. Another great thing is if you have the hydraulic accelerator gap adjustment, you can have the accelerator gap adjustment come in really tight so the machine will throw the crop far behind you. Or you can have it when you're alongside wide open to gain more efficiency and less wear on your spout. You can also, if you have the OptiFill option, have it turn off when you're doing the split through the field. Or if you do have the autofill menu. What is really nice then is when you're doing the split and you hit the one button, it will turn autofill to rear filling versus side filling. So with one button, we'll show you here in a second, you can do all that. So if you've got your settings set for making your split and then chopping alongside. So what's nice is you come up here to this little menu right there, and then you can hit start chopping if you want to make a split. It's now, as you can see, the accelerator gap is moving. Autofill is going to the rear position, and it changed the RPM settings that we had. Now you can get out of there, do your split. Now when you're turning around, come up here, hit chop mode, and now the chopper will be set up so when you're chopping alongside, it'll have all the settings that you've pre-adjusted for that. This is our throttle switch. So all the way back is idle. The middle position is for CMOS auto performance. We use this is our adjustable throttle, so you can adjust how high the throttle goes in normal settings, but with CMOS auto, this allows a dynamic power and the cruise pilot to work. If you push it to full throttle, it's just a full throttle setting. So if you're ever going to be using CMOS auto performance, if you want to save fuel, with the engine management stuff, you need to run the machine in this middle position. Cell phone holder is standard with the new Claas 900 series. But you have different adjustments for different phones. So when you put your phone in, you'll pull this open, set the phone in. But now if you have a big wide phone with a case, as you can see this is pretty narrow, there's a button on the back you push, and then you can slide the tabs out, and now you've got plenty of room to put the cell phone holder.
Thank you for taking the time to learn more about the Claas Jaguar.